Well, good morning. It's great to be here, and it's wonderful to be in California. I haven't written a book, so I'll speak from some notes here. I was asked to come and speak today on an executive level at a casual event. I don't know what that means, actually. It's kind of like being invited to a party and being told to wear business casual. Like, what is that? I guess it means at this event, we should wear orange tennis shoes. So, but I'm delighted to be here. The University of California, for those of you that don't know it, is the finest public research university in the world. It's actually composed of 10 campuses, 9 of which have both undergraduate and graduate students, one of which, UCSF, is only graduate students, primarily in the life sciences and the medical professions. It's also five hospital medical centers. We're the 4th largest healthcare supplier in California, and 3 of the national laboratories of the United States, Lawrence Berkeley, Lawrence Livermore, and the Los Alamos National Lab, all associated with the University of California system. It is an extremely competitive and excellent system. Last week, Washington Monthly came out with its rankings of universities and colleges in the United States, and of the top 5, 4 were schools in the University of California. So for those of you that are Californians, give yourselves a hand. It's pretty significant. I'd like to spend my time this morning talking about the relationship between the technology sector and research universities like the University of California. The university's place in the tech world, as it were. Now, one thing we can say with certainty is that technology changes. One of the people who speaks frequently about this, of course, is New York Times columnist Tom Friedman. You heard him referenced earlier this morning. And he often does so by discussing what the world was like when he wrote his book, The World is Flat, which was published in 2005. And he says, when I sat down to write The World is Flat, Facebook didn't exist, Twitter was still a sound, and the cloud was still in the sky. 4G was a parking place. LinkedIn was a prison. Applications were what you sent to college, and Skype was a typo. So Friedman's words still have merit, though today Snapchat and Instagram stand tall in the ever-changing tech world. The popular use of the word filter has nothing to do with water purification, and selfie is the new typo of old. The point is that to fixate on apps and gadgets of the moment makes it too easy to forget that in no time at all, they will be obsolete. And at times, the fixation on frenetic, ongoing technological change can be a challenge for research universities like the University of California. And that's because in order to fulfill their fundamental missions, research universities must stay above the fray of apps and gadgets of the moment. There are 2 reasons for this. First, not just technology, but the world itself is constantly changing, geopolitically, environmentally, demographically. Universities must teach the upcoming generation the requisite skills to navigate these broader changes. And doing so successfully depends as much, if not more, on teaching students how to think critically, how to write well, how to work in teams, just as much as it depends on teaching them how to work with a particular operating system or master a specific programming language. Second, research universities must foster a culture of inquiry, of trial and error, of forever looking ahead. In other words, they must create the necessary culture for robust basic research. Basic research is the lifeblood of any institution engaged in the creation of new knowledge. But basic research is also expensive. It's time-consuming. Results are never guaranteed. And even if they were, no one could guarantee the results would be profitable. Now, if I were a CEO looking for a new business model, and I was looking at my balance sheet, I'd look long and hard at any line item that said basic research. And the first question I would ask is whether we could outsource it. In fact, many companies have done just that. Basic research has been outsourced, albeit indirectly, but it's been outsourced to research universities. Let me give you the story of a man named Roy Fielding. Today, he is the chief scientist at Day Software, but in the early 1990s, Dr. Fielding was a graduate student in the UC Irvine Software Research Group. During this time, he started, as he says, he started messing around with the World Wide Web. Ultimately, this messing around led Dr. Fielding to become the primary architect of the HTTP acronym at the start of web addresses. Now, HTTP is something most of us take for granted. We often forget that someone had to invent the basics that we use every day without even thinking about it. HTTP is the standard that governs how computers exchange text, image, video, and sound over the internet. Without it, and without Dr. Fielding's other innovations in web architecture, the web might have collapsed under its own explosive growth. To this day, his graduate dissertation remains one of the most referenced dissertations on the internet. Now, when talking about his work, Dr. Fielding makes an interesting point. He specifically credits the fact that he was a graduate student at work in a basic research group for the innovations he created. He says that all of the early web developers, he was the only one who had the freedom to do what he wanted. The others, he says, went to work chasing IPO stocks. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that the world of basic research, the world where that can be done with ultimate freedom, has been outsourced primarily to the nation's research universities. And Dr. Fielding's story is not an unusual one at the University of California. Basic research is one of our fundamental missions. We do it happily. We conduct it in all disciplines, not just those affiliated with the tech sector. Medicine, agriculture, environmental science, mathematics, engineering, and the list goes on and on. Now, let me stop for a moment here and switch gears, talk a little bit about administrative efficiencies. Now, at the University of California, it's a large institution. We have about a $24.5 billion annual budget. Administrators like myself are constantly working for more efficiencies. We want administrative operations to be as lean and as productive as possible. This is a huge priority for me. In fact, instituting a systemic administrative efficiency review was one of the first initiatives I undertook last year when I took over the presidency. Our researchers, however, basic researchers, do not work for efficiencies. In fact, as any Nobel laureate will tell you, when it comes to basic research, sometimes the grace note is on the inefficiencies. It's what doesn't work or work the way we thought it would that leads to unexpected breakthroughs in basic research. And this, in turn, can lead to unexpected applications of that basic research. Now, on the technology front, our pursuit of research is often twofold. First, to create new technology, and second, to create new uses for that technology. So let me tell you about telemedicine. Healthcare access is a big problem in the United States. It's a big problem in California, especially in rural areas. UC is a national leader in using telemedicine to close those geographical gaps. Through telemedicine, optometrists at UC Berkeley screen thousands of low-income diabetic patients in the Central Valley for diabetic retinopathy. And at UC Davis, which is up near Sacramento, pediatricians have given telemedicine consultations to thousands of children in the remote northern counties of California. And at UCLA, doctors use telemedicine to monitor post-operative care for patients who are being treated through Operation MEND, which is a program that provides returning military personnel who have severe facial injuries access to top plastic and reconstructive surgeons. None of these new applications for telemedicine would exist, however, without the technological software for the actual telemedicine, and the development of that infrastructure depended on basic research. Let me talk about drones. Now, as you heard, I'm the former Secretary of Homeland Security. I know a lot about drones. But drone technology can be applied in many different ways. At UC Merced, faculty and students at the MESA lab are hard at work developing unmanned aerial systems that manage scientific data. They are called scientific data drones. The goal is to build drones that can monitor pest control and crop conditions, collect water or soil samples, transmit critical information about wildfire and other natural disasters. Again, UC here is not just interested in creating new technology, we want to create new ways to use that technology as well. So UC researchers right now are flying drones over agricultural fields to take photos. The photos are then put together to create a three-dimensional map which allows researchers to study and identify specific plant species. Other drones are undergoing modifications to be used as remote crop dusters, and still others will soon be deployed to take readings on orchards and determine whether trees are suffering from maladies like water stress or different types of pests. Beyond basic research, both telemedicine and drone development share a common theme, and that theme is a theme of public service. University of California has three missions: education, research, public service. And this is a mission that all public research universities share. Unlike technology, which changes all the time, UC's commitment to public service has not changed, and it will not change. Since the university was founded in 1868, UC has served everyone, not just students, not just alums, not even just Californians. And this is important because public service is not confined by state boundaries, much less by campus boundaries. Ultimately, the new knowledge that UC researchers create can and does reach far beyond the state of California, beyond the tech sector that sits in the university's backyard, and even beyond our nation's borders. The export of knowledge is not only UC's stock in trade, I think it's a moral imperative that never alters, no matter how frenetic the focus is on the apps of the moment. That's why we've adopted as my motto during my presidency that the University of California teaches for California and it researches for the world. That brings me to the final story I'd like to share with you this morning. Last fall, on my first visit to UC Riverside, I met a man known as the Mosquito Whisperer. His name is Anandasarkar Ray. Now, Dr. Ray grew up in India, earned his PhD at Yale, and is now an associate professor of entomology at UC Riverside. He's the kind of superstar that universities around the world compete to attract and to retain. Now, as a graduate student, Dr. Ray became fascinated in the ways in which insects smell things. See, insects actually possess a strong sense of smell. And this is especially true of mosquitoes, which are very good at sniffing out humans, as most of us know. Historically, most attempts to deter mosquitoes from sniffing out humans have focused on creating smells that will repulse them. Dr. Ray took a different tact. Instead of creating smells that would repulse mosquitoes, he decided to try blocking the smells we already create, the ones that attract the mosquitoes in the first place. So to do that, he tested more than 500,000 chemical compounds. Yes, he used a computer program, but do not underestimate the patience and determination that testing 500,000 compounds on mosquitoes requires. Ultimately, he identified several compounds that block mosquitoes from sniffing out humans. He subsequently licensed his discovery, and today it is the science behind a new, inexpensive, non-toxic tool in the global fight against malaria, against dengue, and against other mosquito-borne diseases. It's actually called the Kite mosquito patch, and it's safe for use by people of all ages, including infants and including pregnant mothers. Now, when you ask him about his work, Dr. Ray talks about one of the things that excites him. It is, as he says, the challenge of translating basic research into applications that can save lives. So often it is companies or startups or incubators like those represented by many of you in this room that we need and that humanity needs to help translate the work of basic researchers like Dr. Ray into life-saving applications and to use the market to distribute those applications throughout the world. Without the basic research, however, and the freedom from profit and time pressures to conduct basic research, those applications would not exist. You know, translational research requires, after all, something to translate. Yes, technology is ever-changing. Yes, the world is ever-changing. I think, however, it is a very good thing that some institutions, like our nation's top research universities, hew to the proven practice and pursuit of basic research no matter how much the world changes around them. And by doing so, we, in fact, change the world ourselves. So, I do hope I've been casual enough for you, at least at an executive level. Thank you so much for your attention, and if there's time, I'm happy to take a few questions. Thank you very much.
Tom Andriola. Tom, where are you? I'm just watching. Tom is also here. Tom is the CIO for UC System. For your tech questions, I'm sure that Tom is going to chime in and help out Janet in an executive way.
Yes.
From a geeky perspective.
I'm sure Tom will.
So on that note, any questions for Janet on all those things you heard as you're thinking through? Anybody? Can you please introduce yourself?
Berkeley, UCLA, the #1 school was UC San Diego, and I think the 4th one was Davis.
What was the 5th to round up the top 5?
I don't know. I don't think it was Stanford. I think it might have been a school in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. Don, nice to try. I like that. Phenomenal. Any other questions? Please introduce yourself.
Anil Vasudeva. I'm ex-research industry analyst. You know, it said the arts of arts and the sciences of sciences is politics. And it was the political system in the past here which created what's called the land-grant colleges. And we had agriculture and mining and throughout the whole US, two universities per state and all that. So what has happened is, also during the same political times, we created what's called the academia and the industry collaborations. Out of that came moon charts and a whole bunch of things. Lately, we have been falling behind. I mean, UC system is an oasis in this area. But otherwise, from the rest of the country, the schools have fallen behind. If you were to take over the helm of all education throughout the United States, what would you do to bring the 60s back in this new era of the 2000s?
Thank you. Yes, you're right. The land-grant universities were created in the 19th century by a bill signed by Abraham Lincoln. And this was a time when I guess Congress was able to multitask because they were able to land-grant, they had a civil war, they did a bunch of other stuff. Just saying. From the higher education perspective, first, we have to enlarge the pipeline of students who are academically prepared for the kind of curriculum that we have. That's what Mohammed talked about just a moment ago. That's what they were working on in Silicon Valley. But that's all over the country. I saw it myself as the governor of Arizona. But at the higher ed level, I think the nation is falling behind because it's not supporting its public universities. We have some very, very good private universities, but in terms of size and scale and social mobility, all of those types of things, the public universities are really where the action is. We have, as I said, 9 undergraduate universities. Something like 6 or 7 of them each have more low-income students than the entire Ivy League combined, just to give you a sense of that. So if I were running education around the country, I would definitely put resources and value and talk about the nation's public universities. They have been the engine for America's economic growth over the last century. They still will be the engine properly supported. And second, I would emphasize the need to support basic research in our nation's universities, because as I just described, they really are an ideal setting for the scientific work that many of you are going to be engaged in translating and applying in your own work.
Any other questions? We have a couple minutes left. We can take one in the back right there. Could you introduce yourself, please? Do we have a microphone, Gary? What? Okay, please. Thank you.
All right, go Bears.
So I'm very interested and has been part of the system that you mentioned about translational research, but I'm not sure I quite see the liaising between Berkeley or other universities and the tech sector for this translational research to actually convert to an applied practice, if you will.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so one of the things I've been working on this year is exactly that issue. How do you move basic research from the laboratory at a place like Berkeley into possible exploration for different types of applications and export throughout the world? And quite frankly, given the diminished public support, is there a way that we can generate some revenue from it ourselves? So we've got a couple things going. I'll be announcing actually a number of things in September. But we are getting rid of some of the old policies that created what I believe to be a false wall between basic research and applied research or market applications. So for example, there was a policy that precluded the university from taking equity in a startup as opposed to a licensing fee or something of that sort. We got rid of that policy so that we can be more entrepreneurial our own selves. We're supporting different types of incubators. You may have read in the Chronicle this morning about QB3, which is at UCSF. It's an incubator basically where we rent lab bench space and equipment to graduate students, young faculty, other basic researchers who want to take basic research they've been doing at the university and begin exploring startups, making their research available to the VC community and others to take a look at. And we have those kinds of incubators now all throughout the system, and we're looking for different ways to grow them. And then lastly, I called it an innovation council, but and there are some members, I think, who may be here today, but it's basically a dozen or so real leaders in the innovation economy, the tech economy of California, who are working with me specifically on, okay, how do we make more robust that liaison between the basic research and the applied technology?
We can do one last question. Could you introduce yourself?
John Murray with the Hughes Overangle. Can you share your perspective on some of the trends in learning in an unstructured environment with big data and tooling that's coming out, technology? Young kids are more affinity towards unstructured environment, which is structured learning. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so the question was about learning in an unstructured environment versus a structured environment. Students today more used to the former than the latter, certainly more used to it than we were when we were going to college. You know, I think that's a good segue to talk about online type coursework. And I think a few years ago, online courses were viewed as a silver bullet. This was, you know, governors and state legislators basically saying we don't have to pay for a lot of higher ed like classrooms and stuff because we'll just buy a bunch of courses online and that way we'll have higher ed for everybody. It was a nice thought. Didn't work that way. They're not a silver bullet. However, you're exactly right. Students today learn differently, and the technology, the platforms for online are getting better and better and better. So that at UC, we are doing a lot of what we call hybrid courses. What's a hybrid course? Hybrid course is you don't go to a lecture hall anymore and listen to a lecture. That's done online. You go to the lab to work with the professor on a lab set. If you're, say, in the social sciences, you go to participate in a small discussion group and have that kind of exchange. I think that online education or education using different types of models like that is the way. And when I talk about, and you all in this room, you know, the world we are in is changing all the time. It's changing very fast. Universities also have to change in the way we actually teach and how we look at the educational outcomes we want to produce. And so I think you will see growth in that, but not done as a cost-saving measure, but really done as a way to more effectively teach the next generation. Thank you all. You've been very kind.